Hello, everyone. My name is Tooways Asmal. Welcome to another episode of Two Ways to Skin a Cat, a show where we talk career experiences, entrepreneurship, and investments. The main aim is to show that there's more than one way to be successful other than just climbing the corporate ladder. Now, we are live on LinkedIn and YouTube, and the show will be available on podcast by tomorrow. So, for those listening on Apple Podcast and on Spotify, please leave a rating for the podcast. If you're joining us live, drop a one in the comments so that we know we're not talking to ourselves, and drop a two in the comments if you're watching the recording. My guest for this week is Shifaan Ryklief. He's a founder, software developer, also a digital content creator, a brand builder, and a content studio builder. He's built his own content studio for his community. Shifaan, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yo, thanks for having me. What a pleasure, what an honor, and you made me sound so good.
It's the truth. It's the truth.
Yeah, thanks.
But anyways, let's jump straight into it. Tell us your story. Where do you come from? And maybe even outside of work, who is Shifaan Ryklief? Give us the backstory.
Yeah, so if you've seen my content, you'll know I'm a dad first family guy. I like to lead with that because that's where my motivation comes from. You know, and where I come from, I'm from the Cape Flats. I'm a dad from the Cape Flats. Um, I basically grew up in Wynberg and in Mitchell's Plain, and but about our culture, usually when we grow up, usually our grandparents are looking after us. So it's either like your grandma or an auntie or someone. So that was my situation, being raised by my grandma, my aunties, my uncles, while my mom was, making things happen. So I grew up both in Mitchell's Plain and in Wynberg. And a little bit about backstory. How I got to where I am today is basically through my mom. Watching her do what she does. I'll admit, as a kid, I was a little bit embarrassed about what my mom did. What my mom did, when I go to school, that you have those career days. Like, hey, what does your parents do? And my mom sold chips and sweets on the side on the pavement at the station in Wynberg. And to be honest, it was a little bit embarrassing not knowing, it's entrepreneurship. That's what it is. She made things happen. After high school, I had dreams of what I wanted to become. Um, uh, I wanted to become a professional athlete. I wanted to play soccer, to be honest. And some of the kids that I played with in the street, in the park, at club level, at school level, I can name drop a few, and you won't believe me. But they went on to play for South Africa. They went on to play in Europe, and that's the quality of kids that I played with in the street. Bare feet, broken tackies, broken boots. That's how we rolled. And so after school, I had to grow up quick. I had to help my mom. My younger brother was still in high school. Obviously, when I was in school, my older brother was helping my mom. And when I came out, middle child, out of high school, I had to help her. And that sort of paved the way to where I am today.
Okay. And I know you mentioned outside of work, you were dad and probably football, but what else?
Football, what else? So we want to talk about work-wise. Let's jump in there. You mentioned that I'm a developer, so I'll start there. As I mentioned, when I was done with matric, I worked at the movies in Claremont. Maybe some of you guys know me. I sold you a ticket. And that's where I started, and I met a cool guy. His name is I'll say his name. His name is Zahir Khamildin. He was my first mentor. I never had a dad, so he was my first mentor. He took me under his wing. He taught me everything I needed to know in business at that time. How to even go for that first interview, how to win at that first interview. And I carry all those lessons that he taught me back then still till today, and it still works. I started my career after working at the movies for a year or two. I got a job at Clicks as a night shift operator. And what that basically was whatever happens during the day in any retail store, it needs to be backed up. The data needs to be backed up so that if anything happens, a plane crashes into the building or whatever, we can restore the whole entire system and the company can continue to run. So I was part of a team that we were doing backups on the system through the night. But at some point, the backups are done. And so for me, and I'm going to probably rat on my colleagues here, but while they were sleeping at night shift, I was teaching myself to code. Um, and through the night, I was teaching myself to code. When I was on day shift, I would go upstairs and I would check out what the programmers are doing, what the developers are doing. I would try and figure out who's doing what, and try and carve out a career which way I wanted to go. Because I couldn't go study, I have no tertiary qualifications till today, and that was the only way for me to meet people, to make connections, to network, and to figure out how do I get there where they are. And I taught myself to code, and I moved from clicks to checkers to all mutual, back to clicks, and I became a RPG mainframe programmer at that point. And I spent a couple of years there before going over to checkers. At checkers, I became a SQL developer, and this is where data analytics kind of started. And this is before everybody knew about data analytics. We were doing data on what people were buying in the store, what people were going to leave the checker store, what in their basket, not knowing what they were going to leave. We would place things at certain parts in the store, at the back, in the front, and we would kind of do the analytics on that and predict what they're going to buy, what they're going to put in a trolley. I mean, today it's all over the internet, over YouTube, over social media, trying to work out analytics, who's your target market and all that stuff. And we were doing that before anybody was doing that. And at that point, I didn't even know that. I mean, who would know which way IT is going? But I was doing that and not knowing that a few years later, that's going to help me in social media. So I can use that skills in social media, and I can use that predictive analysis and kind of sift my way through data the way I did it back then.
I want to just jump back to what you said earlier about your mom, about being an entrepreneur. Because I remember being in school, and it's almost like they brainwash you. Like, okay, you must go to school, then you must go to university, and you must study something, and you must be a professional. And then there was always people who would be like, no, I'm going to work in a shop, or I'm going to work in my dad's shop. And I was like, have some ambition in life. But actually, turns out entrepreneurs are the ones that end up ruling the world. But you don't realize that nobody tells you that when you're in high school, and you only get that realization when you've been working for 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, we get that respect afterwards.
Yeah.
Sorry, no, give us your thoughts. Give us your thoughts.
No, all good. Yeah. For myself, I didn't. In my mind, you have to go get a job. And at that point, like when I was also in the corporate, I was like, yeah, I made it. I'm a developer. I'm working here with the biggest systems in the world, actually, at Checkers. And I thought, it felt good. But I always knew that there was something more for me. There was something else. And so on weekends, I would go out to the soccer field and I started a blog, and that's my kind of my pivot into social media and content was just weekend blogging and stuff. And yeah, even though I was chasing that corporate thing on the one side, on the other side, I still knew that there was something else that I needed to go for.
I find that quite interesting because most of the software developers that I know like to be behind their laptop, remotely somewhere, not dealing with people. Whereas you are the opposite of that. You probably deal with people on a day-to-day basis. So what makes you different?
Yeah, so I am that guy, just so by the way. And so what social media makes you look a little bit different to what you are. So people always think I'm this outgoing, loud person, and then when they see me in person, I'm just reserved. I'm just like sitting here, minding my own business. I would sit in a room full of people. And I can sit quiet by myself, and I'm totally fine. And I actually prefer it, by the way. And so that's the developer side of me. And so when in content creation, it's kind of the same thing. I like to be behind the camera. I don't like to be in front of the camera. So what I'm doing now is like I'm out of my comfort zone. And I do still prefer that. And from the developer side, you're always making things. So in content creation, it's the same kind of concept. You're making something out of nothing, and you in control of how that video ends up, how that piece of content turns out. So it's kind of the same kind of logic and concepts that I can just pull over to the other side. And it forces me, because of what I do. I'm someone that don't go out and say, look, I'm going to do this for you and I'm going to do that for you. Because a lot of the times, and sorry if I have to shoot a couple of guys down, but a lot of the times the people say, look, I can do this and I can do that. And I'm in marketing this, marketing that. First thing I do is I go look at your profile. And if your profile looks weak, then I can't trust you. So a lot of people that are in the marketing space, they say we can do all these things, but there's no video on their profile. But you're saying, oh, video is important. But how can video be important if you don't even have any video on your profile? So for me, it's all about, if I'm selling video, I need to be on video as well. I need to know, I need to get my hands dirty. I need to get into the dirt. So that's why you'll see me in front of the camera, because I'm testing. And again, concept of a developer, you're always testing. So I'm always testing, and I'm always checking what are people liking, how do they consume. So there's a lot of more than content. For me, it's more about the psychology of the consumer, and the consumer being the person that's swiping on the other side. Going back to retail, the consumer. So I still use the same terms. I look at it the same way. And I don't think a lot of people look at it in that way. They're just like, oh, here's a piece of content. For me, no, there's a consumer there. How do they think? What do they do? What do they like? Yeah, what's their habits?
One thing that stands out to me about you, and I'm trying to get, especially a lot of young professionals, we all, especially young professionals, we fall into the trap of we get a good job and like, okay, the company's going to sort me out, or if I just work hard, I will keep growing and I'll get to where I get somewhere in life. Whereas when I look at your CV and the explanation, every step you made was a conscious. I'm doing this. I'm now doing content creation on the soccer field, and that's how I got to my next step. And I'm at my next step, and I had to do something extra, something different to get to my next step. There wasn't any somebody's gonna save me or somebody's gonna help me grow. I had to make it, or I had to figure it out for myself and put in the work. Is my understanding correct?
That's 100%, and it's really awesome that you nailed that one down like that. and that goes back to my mom. Selling chips and sweets on the side of the road. There's no one coming to rescue you. You have to make it happen. You have to sell there, and you have to bring the bread home. And that's all I know. I don't know anywhere else. And if I walk into a room, and I always used to keep this to myself, but I'll openly say it. If I walk into any room, I look at everybody and I look who's the top dog, and I'm like, okay, that's the guy who I need to beat. Always. Doesn't matter what I'm doing, because I'm always walking to an industry or into a field that I have no certification, I have no paper, I have nothing that I can pull out of my pocket. So all I have is hard work and ethic, and I'm gonna outwork you. I don't care who you are. I'm coming there. When I walk into the room, I'm gonna outwork you. And so far so good. I've outworked the people that sat next to me with their degrees, to put it bluntly, because I don't know anywhere else. And I would say that's my edge. I mean, we all have our gifts. That's my gift, and I know it, and so I use it as best I can.
I love that. My saying is like, if I must go down, I'm going down fighting. If I'm gonna lose, you're gonna remember
Yeah.
me, even though I lost. You're
You
not
remember
gonna
me.
forget. You're going to remember that time that you. So yeah, I completely relate to what you're saying. But again, like you say, you prefer being behind the camera, but a journalist is not behind the camera when they're doing interviews. So it feels like you've got not a split personality, but different parts of your personality where I'll switch to the front of the camera, I'll switch to the back. And that takes a little bit of skill, because people get into the comfort zones and they don't like to switch. So how do you switch
Yeah.
between?
So fortunately for me, I played a lot of sports, and with my children, I encourage sports no matter what it is. You want to play soccer. If you don't want to play, okay, what's the next one? But we're not going to not play sports. And so there's so much benefit, and you'll see whenever there are people trying to make a difference in the community, you have your Sia Colis, you have your JP Duminis, all those guys, they use sport because they come from sport and they understand the power of sport. And I come from sport as well, so I do understand what it does for you. And growing up without a dad, there were certain things that I didn't have, confidence and a lot of other things that I gained now much later. But because of sport, I was able to flip a switch. And so sport teaches you how to flip a switch. So don't matter if you're an introvert or whatever you are, when you walk onto the pitch and there's a couple of thousand people sitting around watching you and you walk on, you need to flip the switch. whether you like it or not. If you don't flip the switch, the coach is going to shout at you, and the switch will flip, or your captain, or the players. Someone's going to shout at you, and over time, you kind of develop that instinct on, okay, it's time to flip the switch. And if you watch sport, you'll see everybody has this little nick that they do. Okay, maybe they hop onto the field with one foot, or maybe they tie their left foot before their right foot. They all sportsmen have this thing. You can ask any one of them, and that is just the switch that's happening. And so for me, I can flip that switch when I need to. And so, not that I'm comfortable, but I understand that this was must be done now.
When you decide to make that T-shirt that says it's time to flip the switch, I want one. Send one my.
Yeah, that's a nice one. I'll take that one.
Moving over, I want to talk a little bit about your content studio. Nobody just decides one day. You probably the owner like, I'm going to build myself a content studio, and I'm going to build a content studio for the community. So, number one, talk to me about it. Did I get that understanding correct, that you actually built one for the community? Where is it, and what is it about?
Yeah, so part of my content creation journey, it started with being a journalist, and as I mentioned, I was a SQL developer, and because of my blogging, I got picked up at the independent media at the newspaper house, and they offered me a position there because of the stuff that I was doing. And basically, what I was doing was going around to the community at that point and telling the stories of young kids or youth, to give them a little bit of exposure, so that they don't have to fall by the wayside to drugs and whatever else that's happening, because that's where I come from. So I know what's happening. I've seen many players that doesn't make it. And all they need is just a scout to see them. And so for me, it was, how do I get people to see them? And this was at the start of blogging, so 10 years ago, whatever. And through that work, trying to help the people in my community, I was helping myself, but at the same time, without knowing. And then I transitioned over to become a journalist, doing community stories, doing exactly what I was doing as a hobby, but I was getting paid for it now. So that's how I did the switch. And so that's where I kind of honed in my journalism kind of skills. But at that time, that exact year, as I went into journalism, the whole thing of video started to take off, and mobile journalism. And so at that point, we were going on training on how to use your mobile phone to tell video stories, and they need to be quick. So you go out, you shoot a video, you edit on your phone, and you send it through to the editor, and they get it out immediately. And so I was kind of gaining traction on that quick. But because we were a print media, they obviously weren't quick enough. And so I was trying to push, and I was told, no, you can't do that. You need to do this. And I'm like, okay, well, I want to do that, and I can't do that. You have to do that somewhere else. In that year, I got a phone call, from an agency, from a story I did for somebody in the community. And they said, look here, here's this company. They're looking for journalists. Do you want to go for an interview? I said, yeah, okay, let me go. I went for the interview. I think I messed up the interview because the guy was wearing an Arsenal T-shirt. And he asked me, what team do you support? And I said, Man United. Not knowing, not even thinking, because I was nervous for the interview. And I was like, Man United. And he's like, you're either dumb or you're really confident, because I'm wearing Arsenal T-shirt, and you could have easily said Arsenal and walk away and get the job. So I'm like, I didn't even think because I was nervous. Either way, the next day I got the phone call, you got the job. I asked them, and I didn't know who the company was, nothing. And then they told me who the company was. The company was ESPN. So I worked for the biggest sports brand in the world, the biggest media company in the world, covering the UFC, the NBA, the top sports in the top leagues. And that's kind of where I went from community journalist to the top of the game. And again, I was fortunate to work with amazing guys, and I got to learn from them and hone my skills even more. And there I was free to do video and do whatever I want. They do whatever you want to do. And so that lasted for about 3 years. We all got retrenched. And because I took that big jump, I couldn't find work. Funny enough, I was now too experienced. My salary was a little bit too high, and I couldn't find work. So that was for 6 months. And then in that time, when I couldn't find work, I was going around in my community. I went back to my community. I said, okay, how do I tell the stories? Because initially, all I wanted to do is tell the stories of you guys. How do I go back and I just do that thing again? And whatever happens, happens. So I went around telling the story of the lady selling ice cream out of a garage, the guy selling the burgers out of his front porch. And again, just doing those stories. But in my mind, I was like, okay, I, I was kind of told I can't do this and that at these media companies. How do I do that better? So I came with the idea of I want to start my own media company. I want to have my own studio, and then I want to tell the stories the way I want to tell it. And while I'm doing that, I want to upskill youth, guys like me who can't afford to go to university, and upskill them and give them the skills of content creation. Now it's called content creation, but for me, it was just journalism, and teach them journalism skills, and so that they can also find work, and then maybe I can create a pipeline or something. And that was in 2019. Yeah, eventually I got work. Alhamdulillah, I got work, um, and things took off for me again. I went back to the media company, and then I moved over to the Cape Chamber. Met a lot of cool guys. Again, I moved over to a B2B kind of space where I learned a whole other new world, and this is where I met you as well through LinkedIn. Um, and then I still had that side gig. I was still doing stuff on the side, but now I was in the position where I could say, look here, that dream that I had, that vision that I had in 2019. Now it's 6 years later. I can do it now. And then I just started looking, and I found the studio. And yeah, I'm sitting in the studio right now. It's 200 square meter studio. I've got a podcast set up. I've got a networking area downstairs, got a coffee shop downstairs, co-working space upstairs. And it's a one-stop shop, and it's situated here in Capricorn Park. It's the closest that I could get to home in Mitchell's Plain, but I'm surrounded by Capricorn, Lavender Hill, Crossy Park, Mitchell's Plain, 10 minutes away. And yeah, and so this is the closest I can get within my community. And yeah, so that's the story of how I started the content studio. And I wanted to be here because most studios are out in the CBD or in Salt River, Woodstock. So everybody needs to go travel far out, but there's nothing here close to home, and there's nothing that's affordable. So the first thing, it needed to be close to home, and the second thing, it needed to be affordable so that my own people can start creating good content, because they are good creators, and yeah, they just need a platform, and so that's what I'm trying to do.
200 squares is massive. It sounds like you're creating business. You're part of creating businesses at that stage, which is, I mean, quite exciting, for lack of a better word. One thing that I wanted to check with you is, I mean, I've asked you quite a lot of questions about LinkedIn, and I mean, you build personal brands. Let's say there's someone who's whether they are professional or they're starting their business, and they don't have a clue about brand building. What is like the 3 low-hanging fruit options that you have? Is like, are you doing this, this, and this? And if you're not doing this and this, do that first before you worry about getting anything professional or chatting to anyone.
Okay, that's a big question with a lot of answers. So I'll try and give you some of them. So if someone came to me and they got nothing, first thing I'm going to ask them, okay, so what are people asking you? Because obviously, if you're an accountant, if you're a coach, a wellness coach, a soccer coach, whatever, there's certain things that people's coming to ask you all the time. So note that down. And so those are your first pieces of content. So the first thing is, what are people asking you? Now, the second thing is, where do all these people play? So for me, each platform is a playground. LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, they're all playgrounds. And you play differently in every playground. Some people copy paste, they take the piece of content here, they put it in there, and one size fits all, but it doesn't work like that. So first thing, what are people asking you? Second thing is, where's your tribe? In which playground are they playing in? If it's LinkedIn, then it's LinkedIn. And it doesn't have to be one, it can be 3. So for me, I use all the platforms because I need to be visible, because I'm a content creator. And so anybody can be my customer or my client. And yeah, so what are they asking you? Which playground are they playing in? And once you know that, now you can say, what type of content I'm going to push out. So when I say what type, is it video? Is it text? Is it audio? Is it blog post? What exactly? And obviously, what are you comfortable with? So not everybody wants to do video, and that's fine. So we can use text. So those are the three start. That's the kind of a starting point on starting to build your brand. And I think a lot of people, when they say when I start build my brand, I must get a graphic designer, I must change my colors, and I must change my banner on my LinkedIn page. Like you can change your banner, but like the substance is in what you're gonna give, where the value is. So yeah.
Oh, that's true. As we're coming close towards the end of the show, any last words from you or anything you want the audience to know that we haven't discussed yet?
Sure, I think your questions were all good, and I think your questions got most out of what we can chat about. So yeah, I'm all good from my side.
Oh, perfect. I think that's a great way for the show to end. The show has been live on YouTube and will be available on podcast by tomorrow. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast and you feel that it's added value, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on that notification bell to get automatically notified when the next episode comes out. Shifaan, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
Yo, shukran so much for the opportunity, and I've been watching your show, and I see all the big guys on your show. Never thought I would also be on here, but here I am. So thanks for the
You're a big
opportunity, and I hope everybody enjoys and get